awesome space where we're at today, powered by Conway Corporation, which offers a low cost to a co-working space. $25 a month can give you access to this awesome place. Thank you so much for being here today. I would love for you guys to welcome Stephen Show today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to learn from you.
Hey, well, we're going to kind of try to keep it high energy, do some music, do some activities. So just to give you a quick overview so we get the content. I work at UCA as a director of leadership development, do a lot of training. So my kind of area of expertise is facilitation and training. So I do training on campus, I do consulting, different states, go and do workshops, retreats, trainings for industries and companies over different topics like psychometrics, like Strengths Quest, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, or employee engagement and change management or things like that. And so I love training. I love working with students, faculty, staff, and then other industry leaders. And then I'm a music director of a couple of churches. I play piano for a couple of groups. So I have a music stand up here I borrowed from one of my places. So kind of the three pockets that I'm involved in. And so today we're going to kind of just go through this thing talking about what influence is and what that looks like. Let me get my clicker to work. There we go. And so the book that I took all this from is this. Everything you're going to see today, if you're interested in learning more about it, just go on Amazon, buy this book. This company started, it's called Crucial Conversations. It's the first thing they did. You probably heard of this. Deliberative dialogue, difficult conversations, how to have difficult conversations at work and in relationships. That's where it started, and then they've incorporated some new research into influence. So influence is a people problem. That's kind of what we're talking about today. It's working with people and relationships and what that looks like. And so to kind of start us off, I want to ask, there we go. What is influence? When you hear the word influence, what do you think? It's like, what are 1, 2, 3 key things you think of when you hear the word influence?
People doing the thing that you tell them to do.
Yeah, people doing what you tell them to do, exactly. Good or bad, right? Could be good influence, bad influence. What else? Maybe like creating change, getting people to create change, good or bad change, right? And so these are just some quick, basic definitions, right? Power, capacity to change, causing someone to change behavior, belief, or opinion, right? As we know. But I want us to take what we're going to talk about today is how do we influence other people in the workplace, right? So what influence, any of you have a job or part-time job right now you're currently in? Okay, any of you in a student organization on campus? Okay. So how do you influence change? How do you influence people, right, in the workplace? What impact do you have? Kind of asking that question. What do you think?
Strong example.
Okay, good strong example.
Right there.
Okay. What else?
I think like the workplace culture is a big influencer.
Okay. So culture, that's great. Yeah. What else? Yeah, behaviors. That's what we're about to do. Correct. And then we also do that, fortunately and unfortunately, in our personal relationships. Right? Sometimes we're better at work, handling influence, sometimes at home. Sometimes neither, depends on the day, right? And so we're going to talk about what that looks like. So to get us going, to start about influence, there's 2 questions that we ask people, or we ask ourselves when we're influencing behavior. It's why are they or why are we doing that? And how can I help them do this instead? So let's put that in an example, right? So we leave this training today, we're getting on the interstate, going back to Little Rock, and we got to get to a 2 o'clock meeting, so we're rushed for time, pressed for time. Somebody gets in front of us, cuts us off, slows down traffic. What do?
Yell at them.
Besides cussing them out, what do you do? Yelling at them. Exactly. Right? And so we ask, well, why are they doing that? And how can I help them go faster so I can get on my way? Right? So another example, right? We leave our next meeting. We haven't eaten lunch yet. So we drive through real quick. We got to grab something to eat. We order something at McDonald's. We get in the car. We're down the road. Open up the bag. What I ordered is not in there. I ordered a chicken sandwich. I got a hamburger and who knows what else. So what do we start doing? I can't believe they can't read a machine. I can't believe they can't order correctly. They don't know how to process food. We start going on these questions of blaming other people. Why are they doing this? And how can we take control of the problem to fix it? Right? And that's kind of where influence comes from. So when we influence people, we may reason with them. We may bargain. We may guilt trip people to influence behavior. We've all been guilt tripped before. Right? But I want to talk about what's a better way that we can influence behavior. Because what happens if someone nags you, guilt trips you? How do you respond? You shut down. You're not going to change. You're going to shut down. And so as we go into that. So this model, this is so interesting. So just to admit my own ignorance. I looked at this model in the book and I thought, okay, we start with those sources of influence we learned about move. Well, the research now shows that we need to start over here to influence change before we actually go to the side of the 6 sources of influence. So let me give you an example. So results, right? Employee engagement metrics, maybe nurse retention numbers, right? No matter what industry we're in, we have results we need to obtain. Well, we got to first start with results and then move to vital behaviors, right? So the example is, say we have a result of, say, nurses, we want to have a lower, turnover rate for nurses, right? Well, then what are administrators going to put in place to make that happen? We can talk about it all day, and we can motivate people, and we can guilt trip people, and we can throw money at them. But unless we actually have behaviors that stick to make that happen, that maybe is never going to happen, right? So the book talks about an example of there was a virus, a guinea, you heard that the guinea virus and worm virus in Africa, right? And so this researcher, he was using 6 sources of influence, and he said, I want to change it to where no one dies who's infected with this virus. Okay, so he's doing research and he found that people were going to different locations with water. It may be a puddle in the ground, it may be a lake, it may be somewhere, anywhere they had access to water. And they would take these big gourds, see the gourd, it's fall time, so it's kind of like a fall thing. So they would fill it up with water, they take it back, they drink it, and then they get infected, right? Because the worm is infected with water. Well, what he developed was a vital behavior to stop that. He had a goal, he had a result, right? We're going to do this, stop this. Well, he developed a mechanism, a cloth that he put on top of the gourd that they would use to strain the water, and 100% of the time that kept the infection. Every time. Okay, so we have results, we have vital behaviors. Well, what's the hard part? He figured out how to fix the problem, but no one was enacting upon it. And that's where those 6 sources of influence come in, right? So you start with results, you go to behaviors, and after behaviors, then the hard work starts influencing that behavior. Okay, so to put the 6 sources into action, let me go back. So I'll give you a handout. So on the first page, take notes. On the second page, I'm going to give you some activities to do. So use that second page for that. Okay. But here's how we kind of look at the 2 things. And again, the model we were just talking about, what did I say? We go from right to left. Well, we also have to go from right to left on this model as well. And I'm going to explain why. Right. So let's look at this. Social. Are they encouraged to do it? Are they enabled to do it? Well, we can all be on a trip together and the bus breaks down and we get a flat tire. And I'm sitting there in the bus yelling, well, yeah, we're going to fix the bus. Y'all go get out there. Let's go fix it. And I'm holding the tools inside, right, to fix it. Right? So often we think first we need to motivate people. But really the question we need to ask is, do they have the ability to do it first before I actually motivate them? Because I can, like I said, I can all day yell at you, yep, we're going to fix the tire, we're going to be great. But until I give you the tools to do it, you're going to be there forever. Right? You're not going to have that. So thinking about as we go through these categories, ability before motivation. Okay? So quick overview, what is personal, what is social, and what is structural, right? And what does that look like? So personal is all about understanding what motivates and enables people to act in a certain way. That one's easy. It's person to person, right? Social, this is probably, in my opinion, the most challenging one to understand and to actually enact. This is all about people around you and examining how other people in teams and groups motivate and change ability. Okay? And then lastly, structural, these are all non-human influences. So money, physical space, policies, procedures, all those different things. Okay? So at the end of the day, this is what we want. We want to help people love what they hate, because we all have tasks that we don't want to do. We need some motivation to get done. Right? But we also want to help them do what they can. I'm talking about that ability piece. Right? We want to provide encouragement, but first provide assistance, the tools we need. Change their economy. This is the money. You're all wondering where's the money at. This is where that is. And then change their physical environment. Okay? So first we're going to start with personal motivation. And what we're going to do is we're going to take both personal, then I'm going to give you an activity, 2 social activity, and so on and so forth. Okay? So when people think of influence, they think of this. This is the one thing people think they need to focus on, is personal motivation. When in actuality, you have to engage all 6 sources to enact change. Okay, so people think personal motivation is to get people to do it, but 9 times out of 10, it lasts for what? A day or 2, and then people are over it, right? So the first problem it talks about this quote, I love this quote, it says, In organizations, people say that good behavior often feels bad, while bad behavior feels good. Let me say that again, I'm going to give you an example. Good behavior in organizations often feels bad, while bad behavior feels good. So maybe the bad behavior I tell you is speaking up about something, right? That's actually a good behavior, right? Using your voice to speak up when you see maybe something that's wrong or how to change something. But if in my organization that's not a good behavior, then I'm not going to do it. Right? And so we've got to change that or motivate people what that looks like. So the challenging thing with this first thing in personal motivation is this thing called, a lot of words, but the FAE, they call it the fundamental attribution error, is that people do things because they enjoy it, right? So why did somebody cut me off in traffic? Well, because they enjoy being an asset, right? They enjoy running my day, right? That's a great example of that. But I think in that moment, let's take the other person's perspective, the person that cuts me off in traffic. Maybe they're going through something that's really difficult. Maybe they got an emergency that they got to get to the hospital. Maybe they're late for work too. Maybe they're distracted with something that's going on. They're on the way to therapy, or they're dealing with a personal family situation, right? In that moment, they have a lack of understanding and a lack of awareness of how they're affecting you because they're so tunnel vision focused on something else, right? It's not that they don't care about people. It's in that moment they don't care about you, right? And that time, there's something else that's taking another source of influence that's taking up space in their head. So they're not thinking about personal people, they're thinking about themselves, right? So that's what we kind of get as we talk about that. So what I'm going to give you for each source is 3 to 5 behaviors of how you enact, engage in a source. Okay, what you do to make it better, right? To have more influence. So the first one is allow for choice, right? If I'm motivating you to go mop the floor, I have to enable you to tell me, no, I'm not going to do that. Now, there may be right repercussions if you don't do what I say, right, as a boss. But like often we work with people, young people that we say, hey, I can't do this. They're like, okay, great, thanks for doing that. You know, we're like, hey, I don't have time today. That's not on my plate. Okay, well, you'll fit it in there. You'll make it work, right? People that no matter their no means yes, yes means no. There's so much ambiguity. You don't know what they really mean when they say something, right? So you have to allow for choice. That's so important. The second one is create a direct experience of how that behavior impacts people. Okay, so an example is there was a CEO of a hospital. This is a true case study, and he wanted to increase patient safety numbers because they were having lots of patient deaths, lots of situations coming up with employees. So what he did is he said, managers, I want you to go to, in the next 2 weeks, I want you to find a patient where something's gone wrong, and I want you to stay with that patient until they're discharged. You do not leave. You go, maybe go home, get a few hours of sleep, but you're coming back. You don't do anything else except stay with those patients. So what happened is 2 weeks later, all the managers came back in the room. Guess what? All the managers, some people were in tears, sharing that experience of what was happening. Some people were anxious. Some people were, I mean, there were just so many emotions going around because the managers did what? They actually had a direct experience talking to somebody. After that, 2 quarters later, safety rates went from 31% to 64% because they had that direct experience, actually experiencing what patients went through. Because as managers, that happened, they just delegated an employee to go take care of that. They actually had to have that experience. Okay. Telling meaningful stories. So whatever your values are in the organization, let's say transparency is a value, then sharing stories at staff meetings where another staff member talked about transparency, right? Or if it's integrity or diversity, whatever that is, sharing stories along with those core values. And then my favorite to this area is making it a game. So I don't want to say I'm not a competition person. In Strengths Quest, it's like my number 20. So I'm not saying everything has to be competition. But think about it. What do people go to right now to work out? They go to sports theory type classes right now, right? Stuff like that is just like booming through the roof. Why do people enjoy maybe the style of an Orange Theory workout class? What do you think? What are some things that people enjoy about that? It's high energy. It's more social. It's more social. It's healthy competition. And they get a lot of results. I'm telling you, people that go to that, you see people 6, 7 months have huge performance results on whether it's weight or physical health or eating better, right? That community, that healthy challenge, motivation makes it important. So thinking about that as we kind of go through that. Okay. So next, what did I tell you? Ability is more important than what? Motivation. Okay, so now we're going to get into personal ability. which is all about putting ability before the way we move. So how do we give people the ability to be personally motivated? Well, we do it in several steps. We give 1 or 2 skills to learn at a time. There are those people that come and they're training on something, especially a new tech system, and they tell you 30 things buttons you gotta use in the system. And then what happens after that training? You're like, I need another training. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm mixing and matching stuff up, right? So use 1 or 2 skills at a time in training, right, to process information. That's important. The second is train at the edge of ability. So what do I mean by that? Practice a tad bit beyond the competency level of that person. And that's different for everybody, right? So the research shows that when you train somebody, learning is best under mild stress. Too much stress shuts down learning. Little stress shuts down what? Attention. So if I'm not engaging you enough, you're wrong. If I'm over-engaging you, you're stressed and you can't concentrate. So find that middle balance is so important, right? And then lastly, giving immediate coaching and feedback, where, hey, here's how it went, here's how we could do better. So let's take it to like a sports example. Say we're Olympic athletes and we're skiing, right? So not me, I'm a terrible skier, I've done it like twice. We're not gonna do that, but for the sake of today, we're doing that. So a coach would pick 1 or 2 things that they would fix, right, at that Olympic athlete, right? So straighten your skis and spread out. They're not gonna give you 10 things to think about, they're gonna give you 1 or 2 things to think about on the edge of ability, what you're going to do. And then as soon as you've done that ski, that run, giving you immediate coaching for how you can do it. You see how that's more effective than me giving you 50 things to work on in one day, and giving you 1 or 2 concrete things to work on, right? And so the example, I thought this was really good. Y'all probably seen this. It was on TikTok. The CEO of Starbucks closed all Starbucks locations about a year or 2 ago for a whole day. Don't know, anybody know why? There was an employee who is a really high traffic area, a lot going on, employees were overwhelmed. Somebody came up and the attitude was yelling at an employee. And so they wrote, I think, like, bitch on somebody's name. Like they put like a profanity name on somebody's cup instead of and gave it to them. So then the person gets mad, they're screaming, they're yelling, all these things. Well, what the CEO decided was this isn't a personal motivation issue. This is the ability in high stress situations. My employees don't know how to handle stress, right? And to calm down and to meditate or whatever that looks like. So he shut down Starbucks for a whole day and had at each location people got to spend time learning how to cope with stressful situations, right? How to have those difficult conversations. So you see what I mean? Ability before motivation is going to have a much bigger effect, right? So what I want you to do is we're going to discuss. Okay, we're okay on that. So on the second sheet of paper, I want you to rate the 2 different areas for personal motivation and ability, right? In your organization, what score would you give it on a 1 to 10 for how well we influence change through personal motivation and how well we influence change through personal ability? Okay, and then the same, personally, in your day-to-day relationships, how do you influence change with people that you're in a relationship with, right, through ability and through motivation? And then maybe what are 1, 2, or 3 things that support or go against that score, right? If it's a high score, well, we're transparent. Well, we coach. If it's a low score, well, we don't give people tools, or well, we overdo training, right? So what are some examples of scores? So I'm gonna give you about 2 minutes. I'm gonna play some music, and then we'll kind of debrief. And we'll do this for each section as we go. So let's go. And I'll walk around and kind of help too. So score 1 to 10, how well you do at work in the workplace, personal motivation and personal ability, and then what are 1 to 3 characteristics that support that? Or use your phone too, sorry. Feel free to partner up and work with someone to help you kind of brainstorm too. I'll put some of the tips up here to kind of help jog your memory. I'm gonna wrap stuff up quick, just about an hour. This is typically probably 1.5 hour to 2 hour session, so we're kind of going at rapid fire. So what do you think? What score would you give? Let's start with personal motive. Right, what do you think? Out of 10 in the workplace, what score would you give it? How well is that area utilized for change and for influence? 7. What are some factors that went into that 7?
For my organization, I say 7 because you have 10 employees.
Okay.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
And they're not really subjected to too much change.
100%.
And with the technology that changes every day, they just throw their hands in sometimes.
Kind of get overwhelmed. Yeah, that's great. Anybody have an example or the score for personal ability, right? Skills, how we train, how we coach. What score would you give your organization? Or your ability in your personal relationships, right? Working with people. How well do you teach, communicate, train, coach? And it's okay if you don't have the best score. We're all wanting to improve. Right? What do you think? What number would you give yourself for your team?
I would give our team a 5.
What factors?
I think that I'm kind of newer to the organization, and some observation, a big observation I've made is that we're very reactive versus proactive.
And this is where this areas where onboarding, for those of you that are really big on this kind of stuff, is important. This is where we first start. Do we start coaching, giving feedback and training properly from day one? Because if not, if you've lost someone in the first 60 days and you haven't ingrained that culture, it's so much more difficult to get that. Right? So that's a whole other training, but just to kind of go. Okay, we're gonna keep rocking and rolling. So social is next. Again, this is the 4 areas we talked about. Yep. So providing encouragement and assistance. This is kind of the most challenging area to enact change and influence. Okay. Let's get on with this. So it's perfect. So influence, all about how we get people on board, right? And so it kind of lends itself into 3 categories. Starting with you, obviously, how you influence and enact change, especially if you're in a position of authority in an organization. Right, engaging leaders, we're going to talk about formal and informal leaders, especially what I call opinion leaders, and peer accountability, right? So here are the things that you can sacrifice personally to get people to feel socially invested in and influencing your organization. You can sacrifice your time with people. You can sacrifice money. you can sacrifice ego, and you can sacrifice other priorities. So I'll give you a quick example of some of those things. With the time, there was a CEO started new in an organization, and every Saturday for 12 months, he picked a different employee at random, from custodial staff all the way up to VPs, that he would spend 3 hours every Saturday morning, go to that person's house, meet with their family, and just get to know them. He sacrificed for 12, but I don't know if I can do that. I'm just being honest. But he, for 12 months, picked a different person, like I said, from the top to the bottom, at random, that he would spend time with. What a big sacrifice of time. Someone did that with me, my boss did that with me. I'd either be scared or I'd be like, wow, they are really invested in what we're doing, right? Then we talk about money, ego, right? Often we see in the news, we see on social media, company leaders make terrible statements, whether it's diversity inclusion statement, whether it's, something about the definitive employee, right? And then making statements, taking ownership for when you maybe slip up and say something you should. That's important. And then also figuring out other priorities. So the example, again, another case study was a CEO that was meeting with a group of leaders, and they were having a town hall complaining about all these things that were going on. And so the CEO checked his watch and he realized that minutes I have a prime minister coming to meet with me for a meeting. He stayed late until that town hall was finished. It was 45 minutes late to meet the prime minister, right? Which looked bad on him, but he realized my people are more important. And I may have to selfishly give up some of those other priorities, right? So starting with you, are you willing to give up those things to influence change? Because that's going to get other people on board. Secondly, engaging leaders, right? And what I don't want to focus on leaders, I want to focus on what I call opinion leaders. So opinion leaders are people that have the highest influence, typically not the CEO or VPs. They're people that you go to when you have a crisis or a problem and ask for questions, right? And the stats say that 85% of your organization will not change until the opinion leaders agree to change. So CEOs, VPs, presidents, whatever, we're ready to go. Until those opinion leaders do it, no one else is going to follow suit. Okay. And then lastly, peer accountability, right? How do we keep people accountable in the organization is so important. So, okay, again, back to the most important thing, which is ability, social ability. So here are some of the 4 steps. So let's think about this before we get into it. So say we're going to go to a lunch meeting, just 2 of us. And then, 3 other coworkers want to come join us. What's going to happen to that lunch meeting? 3 more people, it's going to be 2 of us, now we have 5 people. What's going to happen when we go eat lunch? How long is that meeting going to last? It's going to last a lot longer, right? So then we sit down, we're eating, we're meeting, and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta be healthy, gotta get this out. Well, somebody orders breadsticks. Well, and then everybody's grabbing a breadstick. What are you probably gonna do? Figure out a breadstick. Well, then someone wants dessert. So what do you go? Well, everybody else is eating dessert. Yeah. So as we keep going on, that social impact ability influences how 9 times out of 10 we're going to react to a situation. Right? The same thing, to put it in a workplace scenario. A CEO leads a meeting and he says, I'm not going to give any feedback on our agenda until I get the opportunity for everyone else to talk. And he continually does that. And until everyone is given feedback, every meeting, he decides to give this feedback. That culture change, the social ability is going to change where people feel more and more comfortable to speak up, right? And so giving permission, right, to break bad norms is so important. So there was an example of the book. There was a company, business leaders, that at their meeting, they go around the room and say, okay, are we ready for Q4? Are you going to be able to bring out this product? Everybody would lie, every single time. So, yep, we got it, we're going to have it. And then come Q4, they didn't have it ready to go. That became such a norm that managers were just trying to say, just say, yeah, we're good. We'll deal with it later, right? To change those things are much harder than to implement those things, right? So important. Modeling new behavior is important. There's an organization called the Other Side Academy. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's in California. But they take convicts with terrible criminal charges, drug trafficking, prostitution, vandalism, murder, all these things, and they put them in an academy together to support them. And what they do is, as you go through this academy, it's kind of like set up like high school. You're freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. You wear different colored shirts based upon if you're a freshman, if you're a sophomore, if you're a senior, you get a blue shirt. So it kind of ranks, how people are in an organization. Well, there was a guy who, when you first get intaked, right, you intake with a group of people. And they ask you, do you know anybody else in this room that you're being intaken with? And this guy, there were two other people he'd been in a drug arrangement with that he worked with on the streets. He lied and said, nope, don't know anybody, because you all live together, right, in your group that you come in. So 2 years in, he's a sophomore, he's got his shirt. He hears of another guy who's a senior about to graduate from the program. And he notices he's wearing the blue shirt, and the next day he's back to wearing the green shirt. So he's been there for 4 years, and why aren't you back to a freshman, He goes, well, when I had my intake interview, they asked me if I knew people in my life. And I couldn't graduate and know that I lost that intake. And then I said, damn. And so the next day, what did he do? He went and confessed. That led to multiple, like the traffic effect that happened, that modeling behavior, and that just completely changed the culture. That trust went through the roof. Like you could just feel like how the area was transformed by that. So modeling that behavior is so important. Offering help. I talked about tools and resources. The example they gave is great. In a certain country in Africa, they were having high levels of abuse between husbands and wives, right? Men were going home after work, beating their wives, yelling at them, all this stuff. And so the psychologist said, well, we've got to change the behavior, but I can't go on people's houses and fix this. I don't know what to do. So somebody said, well, using the sources of influence, let's come up with a tool we can use to influence change. So what he did was he started a radio show. Everybody had internet TVs, they all see the radio. And he would play a scenario. He hired actors to play the scenario of a husband and a wife fighting each night, throwing stuff at each other, screaming, cussing, yelling, all that stuff. Well, what he did is a couple of episodes in, he talked about how a group of community members would grab pots, pans, utensils, go in front of the windows and start banging on them as they would hear conflict. So after 2 episodes, what did people start doing in their communities? They started doing these behaviors. Husband and wives would have fights. They would literally go to the window and start banging on pots and pans until the husband stopped screaming or left. And hundreds of thousands of people started doing this. And it changed the behavior because they gave them a tool that helped them change that behavior. This sounds so simple, but it really saved lives, right? And then obviously providing coaching. So this is what I'm talking about, ability first before we move to motivation is so important. Because if I'm talking about I want to change the situation, but I'm not giving you those tools, those pots and pans, you're not going to know what to do, right? And so that's why I talk about ability first. So now let's discuss from a social standpoint, where would you rate your organization and yourself in terms of social motivation? Go back to some of these things, starting with you. How well do you work right to enact change? How well do people that influence change in your organization? What's the score for that? And then what would be the score for social ability? Do we have tools? Do we have permission? Do we model that behavior? Do we coach people in the organization? Okay, so we'll come back. Let's go. One more minute. Also, if anybody wants me to share these slides, it's all your stuff. So afterwards, send me an email. I'll send you these slides. So one more minute, and then we'll discuss. Okay, let's discuss. These are great things I would say after this training to go back and kind of reflect upon. I know we're pressed for time, but what would you rate? Let's start with social motivation. What would you give it? 1 to 10 in the workplace? Or in your organization? 10. What? Why 10? What are some factors that lead to that?
I feel like the level. You guys help me. You know, I should participate. You know, the level of autonomy and trust that we
Okay,
have in the
yeah.
organization.
Accountability, trust, yeah,
Yeah.
engagement, great. Yeah. There you go, you got it. What about social ability? Again, ability is what we start with first, right? So what about ability? What score would you give your organization? All right, modeling good behavior, giving tools, coaching, giving permission to change bad behavior. How would you rate? What score would you give it? Anybody by show of hands have a 5 or lower? I'm not gonna give it a 6 or higher? Okay, you gotta have one of the two, so. We have a trick question. Yeah. What are some factors that you think may lead to a lower score in an organization? A 0, a 1 to 5?
I would say for my staff, I can go in, I can model the behavior I work at school, so I go in and try to model things on how they can work with a child that they have nothing. I want to see people that they may be in the class and taking them on adventures. So
Yeah.
I'll go in and model how they can redirect that child. Even with me modeling that, I still need to give them more training, like,
Okay.
in how they can handle a child. So
That's great.
I would give myself a 5 on that. I'm good with modeling, but they need more training to be able to handle the situation.
That's great. Thank you. It's a great example. Okay, we are now going to move on to my favorite category, the structural area. This is stuff tangible that you can almost like hold or see, right? So structural motivation is about rewards, perks, bonuses, salaries, and sometimes keeping people in the ass, in the door, out the door. We'll talk about that in a minute. And just for the record, giving everybody a 3% raise, that's this area. Terrible, terrible, terrible idea. Why is giving everybody in the organization a certain raise? Terrible idea. We do it all the time. What does that behavior encourage?
Force mediocre.
It's everybody. They're all the same. It can be great, it can be bad, you can suck, but you should get the raise, right? So, but a lot of organizations do that, right? So thinking about how are we, right, from a structural motivation standpoint, right, engaging good behavior. So first, use extrinsic rewards last, right? These are those things I just talked about. COLAs. I'm not saying they're not important, but if they're not followed by a culture of social and personal motivation and ability, it's just we're doing it to kind of band-aid. We're like, we're not the best, but we're gonna give you some money because it's just the way we do things, right? You got to start with the first two before you get money motivation. And think about it, for example, think about a kid. Remember in like elementary school, you could read books and you got pizza party or you got points or whatever. Well, like say a parent did $2 for every book you read. Okay, for years this goes on. Well, maybe by 10th grade, they stopped giving you $2 for every book you read. What happens to that behavior? I stop reading. And I'm probably going to spend that money to buy maybe movie tickets or a concert or play a video game. I'm going to do it a completely different behavior because it wasn't motivation for me. It was just like, you gave me some money, but it didn't have a long-term effect, right? So that's kind of what I'm getting at. And then using incentives wisely is important. Believe it or not, you say you're not drawn to incentives, but we are all the time. Coupons for things. A lot of people have Hilton, Marriott, American Airlines, Delta, credit cards. Because they want these, people are like, I just got a point. I just bought a sandwich and I got a point. People get excited about that, right? I use my airline card all the time. So What's the crazy fact is that these miles in the economy, these frequent flyer miles, exceed the amount of cash that is circulating the US economy right now. All these miles more than the circulating cash in the US. Isn't that crazy? So people can't say we don't value incentives. We really do. Like we are incentive driven to do things, right? And then reward behavior, not just results, is so important, right? And then the last part is we think, well, when do we fire someone? After we've had that conversation, that this is the consequences, this is the behavior we need to change. Only after that, I hate when people fire people out of the blue and don't give anyone a chance to like grow and get better. And it happens all the time. And then what is that person really thinking? What did I do? How can I get better? How can I change this behavior? That is a lack of understanding and awareness on both people's part, right? And I hate when that happens. So, okay, moving to ability. Again, ability is more important than motivation, right? So this is all about our physical and virtual environments. First, we talk about virtual environment now, right? So there was a situation, there was a CEO thinking about physical space of a big company, I would name it, but I'll keep it anonymous. That to meet with the CEO, you had to walk through 6 hallways. One hallway had artwork, one hallway had sculptures, and one hallway had exhibits. As soon as you left that kind of museum style hallway, you were then put by a security desk. Then you had to check in the security desk, go to a formal waiting room, then you got escorted into the CEO's office. And his desk was like the size of a pickleball court. And he brought in a group of organizational psychologists to sit back. People don't want to share information. Like no one wants to talk when I have one-on-ones with them. Well, like how intimidating is that? You know what I mean? And a fun fact, I didn't know this. Hitler, guess how many feet of hallway he, at minimum to have an office, he had to have between you walking in to get to
6 hallways.
480 feet. So it could be 6 hallways, but he required 480 feet between the front door and him to get to for this power and prestige, right? To get to have a meeting. So that physical space, right, creates a physical barrier. So here are some ways to change physical spaces in the way we communicate. So add a cue, right? So the example the book gave was they gave 60 people, every day they give them a whole can of Pringles, okay? They're like, here's some Pringles. Do whatever you want. Eat them, don't eat them, don't care. Put them on their desk. Well, 30 of the people, what they did is in the Pringles can, every 10th chip was a different color. They had a green chip, a blue chip, an orange chip, a black chip. What do you think? What do you think happened between the 2 groups? The group that had different colored chips, what did they do? They ate way less Pringles every day. Sometimes even like a day or 2, they didn't eat Pringles. Why is that? Because the color cube, it literally psychologically said, oh, how many chips have I had? Like that color reminded them, and if they didn't have it, they didn't do that, right? So that's important too. So adding a cue for change is important in instruction. What about changing the data stream? So just tell me, now I'm asking this question to all of you. Tell me every place in the world where armed combat is currently taking place. From your experience, like on social media, tell me every place, any kind of combat's going on. Middle East, for us. Okay, that's fine. So what led you to like know that information? How did you come up with Middle East? Where have you seen that? On the news, right? Well, any time in the world, there's always at least 24 armed conflicts going on any time. Why don't we notice this? Because the media outlet we're looking at is only showing one thing, right? So sometimes we physically have to change our data stream, right, to change the way we interact with things. Like I think that I have a good friend who is a hardcore conservative and watches Fox News all the time. But what he does is he also goes, one day he'll put on CNN, one day he'll put on, MSNBC. He changes his data stream and he's like, well, that's not lining up sometimes because they reported this on Fox News and CNN said this and then Twitter said this. So it doesn't matter if you have your own political or social beliefs, but are you changing up the way you get information? Because that's not always true, right? Perception is key. So that's a big part of that. Anybody know what this word is? Propinquity? I've never heard it before I did this training. It means physical space. So I'll never forget this word. I've read about it 100 times in this book. So it's our physical space and our physical area. So let me read you some stats. This is crazy as we think about virtual reality or the virtual world. So people are 3 times more likely to discuss information when they sit next to each other. Those that are 30 feet removed from each other are half as likely. 30 feet, almost be back to that wall, half as likely. If you're 90 feet apart, it's the same collaboration level as if you were miles apart from each other. 90 feet equals miles and miles apart from each other. Okay? So what I'm here to say is that virtual world isn't a bad thing, but we have to replace that broken beauty, that connection, right, to have good behavior. So that means replacing physical connection, creating a physical structure in the virtual world. So the book gave a lot of really good examples. This was interesting. Is one company institutes a 15-minute everyday check-in with 2 different people, different everyday in the organization. So every day you're matched up. HR gives you an employee, whether it's your department, another department, you have to do a 15-minute check-in with them every day. And it's not really about work, it's about life, opportunities for growth. How are you coaching yourself? How are you challenging yourself? What are some physical, spiritual, emotional, mental goals you have? And that created a connection. You were required, unless there's something going on, to do that every day. Right? So that's an example of how to replicate some physical practices into the virtual world. Second is make behavior changes easy. So if I have a bowl of M&Ms on my desk right next to me, this is another study, they put it on their desk, and then they had half the group, they put it on a shelf. Who ate more M&Ms? People was on their desk. It seems so simple, but literally physical, I'm too lazy to get up and go get those M&Ms, so I'm just gonna sit here. Right, but that physical space literally made it easy to create that behavior change. Right, and then lastly, change of process. So, and this one's big too. The example they gave was, there was a CEO who would go home every day, and he'd get home and he'd be flustered thinking about all the things that happened from that day. And his wife and kids started to say, well, we don't want you to come home like this. Like you're rude, you're disrespectful, you're in a bad mood. It's bringing our mood down. So what he did is, I don't know if I remember, Walmart used to give out those little smiley face stickers at the end of everything. He got one of those and put it on his steering wheel. And it reminded him every day when he got home, he turned off his car, put a 3-minute timer to the 3-minute meditation before he went to the house. Behavior completely changed. That little sticker reminded him every day, if I'm in a bad mood, I've got to do that meditation piece, right? So changing a process. So this source, when we talk about structural ability, they call it the sleepless ally. So once in place, once I make these changes, they just become natural. We don't have to think about it. Like the smiley face, like the M&Ms, like the Pringles, I see it, I feel it, and I change the behavior. Okay? So now let's discuss in your organizations 1 to 10. What would you give structural motivation and structural ability? And then what are some things that limit that? Okay, let's go. Okay, for time, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to move on. But again, great things to think about, reflect later on. Even use with management teams to think about some of these sources. So anybody quickly think of a number? What number did you give? Maybe structural motivation? Don't tell me why, just tell me the number. 1 to 10. 8. Males.
6.
6. Okay, what about ability? How well does structural ability play in the workplace? Right? Physical space, making it easy to make behaviors, cues to change behaviors, our information. What score did you give that? Anybody above it, 5 to 10? Show of hands. Okay, so good. Okay, so let's put all this actually into practice. Okay, so how do all these 6 sources? Let me give you an actual real-world example of how this happened if you use all 6 sources. Okay, so Daniel had a goal of raising $300 from his fraternity brothers to decorate for the holidays. Full of optimism, he set out a bucket in the house's cafeteria and labeled it Christmas Lights Donations. 3 days later, he had a total of $20 plus a gum wrapper in the bucket. Daniel then decided to take into account the 6 sources of influence. So this is what he really did. Okay? So Daniel decorated the 5-gallon bucket in Christmas glory in order to make the pitch easier to see and to connect the emotions that would promote participation. Sources 1 and 6. He posted an enormous picture of Santa's piercing eyes above the bucket, giving the impression that he would know if he were naughty or not. Source 3. He gamified the challenge by displaying a large thermometer displaying progress towards the goal, which is sources 1 and 6. And he posted the names and donation amounts of everyone who had contributed to the thermometer. That's the people, right? The source 3. Within 48 hours, Daniel exceeded his goal. I think he had like almost $1,000 from people, parents, and gave money and stuff. Isn't that crazy? How so this seems all silly and like there's a lot of things to engage, but really that's a great, clear example of implementing all 6 sources of engagement. So again, I told you what's important is that you have to use all 6, not just 1, but all 6 to enact behavior change. And it comes back to those 3 questions. What results do we want at the beginning? What are the behaviors we're going to use? And then how do we implement them all? Right, you may ask that question. Somebody the other day was like, well, which one's most important? You boil it down. Well, which of your organs is most important? Your heart, your brain, you need them all to function. Like, without a brain, you're not going to be able to function. So you're having to use all of them, right, to communicate. So what I want us to do to kind of close out is up here on this table, I have a bunch of all kinds of pictures. Okay, so I want you to come pick a picture. We're going to form a circle that represents the way that you influence behavior change in your organization. What picture would it relate to that? Okay. Then I want you to think of a word or a sentence, very short, like that would go with the picture. Okay, so give you a couple minutes, grab a picture, form a circle, and then we'll debrief. And we'll cut out. Let's go. Yeah, we can circle up.
Yeah.
Or the way you do it. You want to.
Back on this one. Yeah.
And if you like somebody else's picture, you can share it with the 2.
You're like, I like
This one.
30 more seconds. Yeah, just go run semicircle, doesn't matter, it could be whatever shape. Okay, yeah, okay, this will work. So just real quick, kind of show us your picture, and you can say a word, you can say a sentence. Well, to keep it less than 2 sentences. But just kind of how, how do you influence change and influence behavior in the workplace? So,
Yeah. Right here, my guy is watering the plants, as you see, it's kind of growing. I currently work at the building here in the airport. First person in the training department, so kind of building the department. Basically HR administration, information systems, so I have to train end user employees all the way up to directors. You remember earlier I said that people have been there 20 years, 30 years. Those are the ones that they want the one-on-one training. They don't like group settings like this. So I have to tailor my training to basically go to their offices and we'll make sure they do it. So that's why it's kind of hard. Trying to grow.
that's great.
I work in conductor and I bring everyone wine. So I think self-care is really important. You can't pour from an empty cup. One of our core values is take care of each other. Sometimes being able to identify that, like, hey, I may need this day because I'm not doing well, and then for the team to be able to cover for me or cover for each other is really important. So then we can really perform. But wine is really good too. So.
I work at a school with children with developmental delays, so I would say this would be me right here. I'm very optimistic and saying we can rise above anything, and I try to encourage my staff in going in the rooms and helping them. So this is
That's great.
me.
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
So the word I have is teamwork. I chose teamwork because I work at the student center at CA, and we have a good group of managers that we mesh together. I would say quality of opinion, not having one person, outweigh another.
Starts.
I would say building relationships, building that camaraderie, and help the organization be as successful as possible.
That's great.
My picture, you got one lending a hand to another, so you're just kind of picking each other up.
I would say kind of multitasking and being able to balance different, things around to help people.
I didn't notice this one in the back, but basically bringing everybody together, making everybody feel comfortable. 100%. This one, I like to stay pretty where everyone's feeling, I think, and then treat them accordingly.
Mine was uplifting, like morale.
I think like pointing people to the goal, being encouraging.
Yeah, stepping out of your comfort zone, having team members to help encourage you.
I think I did the opposite. I picked what I do at home instead of what I should do in the workplace. But yeah, but I think it just helps me realize the things I should be doing better to influence positive behavior in my teenage children and my wife.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
I chose snails. Yeah, because there's a saying in my country, and we say that it's better to do slowly and efficiently than just too quickly and just do it wrong.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's good, it's good. I like to have good conversations, let's get on the same page, just talk things through and not just let things fester.
All right, I'm all about work productivity, but I think having a peaceful spirit about you goes a lot further, and so I started for that while doing stuff.
Okay, awesome. I'm gonna put your pictures back, go back, we'll do a 10-second closeout. And we'll Okay, so here are some sources. Again, everything came from this book. If you're interested, give it me after. I can send you the slides. And I'll stick around for a couple minutes if anyone has any questions, ideas, or next steps they want to share.